Arnold Schwarzenegger, the man once known to the world as the Terminator, now lives thanks to a pacemaker implanted in his chest. The steel heart of that legend once made millions believe he was indestructible. But in truth, throughout his entire life, Arnold has been doing only one thing: running from the fear of weakness within himself. Few people know that his journey to the throne of bodybuilding, cinema, and politics did not begin in glory, but in a cold basement in the village of Thal, Austria. There, young Arnold lifted rusty iron weights to forget his cruel father's shouting and the fear of being invisible in his own home. Talent took him far, but loneliness was what stayed with him for life. From the Mr. Olympia stages to the Terminator film sets, from the governor's office to 3 near-death heart surgeries, Arnold lived as if he were racing against the darkness chasing him. Yet no muscle could save him from the greatest fall of all: a broken marriage, a shocking secret, and wounds only his heart could understand. This story is not just about fame, but about a legend's journey back to being human. From iron to repentance, from muscle to heart. Because perhaps what truly makes Arnold Schwarzenegger great is not that he never fell, but that he rose again from his own wounds. And to understand how a man could be strong enough to dominate 3 different worlds, yet fragile enough to keep running from his own fear, we must go back to where everything began: a small village left behind by war. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in 1947 in Thal, a poor village surrounded by the cold, gray hills of post-World War II Austria. Life there was so harsh that winter seemed to seep into every grain of wood in the family's old house. No heating, no hot water, no comforts. Only a heavy silence and the iron discipline of his father, Gustav Schwarzenegger, a police chief who stepped out of the post-war years with a soul that had never been repaired. In that house, Arnold was not the favored child. His father, Gustav, was so strict, he became violent. The beatings and the shouting made the childhood of the 2 brothers, Meinhard and Arnold, a daily trial of fear. Gustav favored Meinhard, the stronger brother who fit the standards he set, while Arnold was seen as strange because he preferred dreaming, drawing, and staring at bodybuilding posters instead of playing football. That favoritism carved out a cold distance that young Arnold had to fill on his own. Years later, he wrote in his memoir that his father did not believe I would become anything, and that was what planted in him a fierce need to prove the opposite. While other children ran around the fields, Arnold often went down into the basement of the house, where the only light slipped through a narrow gap in the door and landed on the rough concrete floor. There, he trained with homemade weights crafted from scrap metal. Every lift burned his hands, the cold cut into his skin, but the feeling of heavy iron pulling downward brought something more familiar than warmth: the sense that he was forging an escape route for himself. The war had ended, but its shadow still hung over every Austrian household. For Arnold, that shadow darkened his childhood by forcing him to grow up too soon. The basement and the clanging of metal became the only place where he could set fear aside and test himself against a larger world. A world he believed was waiting for him somewhere beyond the hills of Thal. At age 15, at the very moment he thought he might be trapped forever between the cold of Thal and the heavy shadow of his father, Arnold found something that changed his entire destiny: a photograph of Reg Park, a man who looked as if he had stepped out of mythology, 3-time Mr. Universe, and an actor who played Hercules on screen. It wasn't just the muscles or the godlike appearance. It was the feeling that he was seeing a map, a ready-made route out of his life, delivered at exactly the right moment. Bodybuilding, America, movies, glory. That photo became his compass, his secret blueprint leading him out of a village where no one believed he would become anything great. Arnold didn't train to build muscles. He trained so as not to be swallowed by mediocrity. Every session was a silent rebellion against a destiny written by poverty, violent discipline, and favoritism at home. That's why, as a teenager, while his peers were learning to adapt to the world, Arnold was trying to escape it. The story of him cycling 3 hours from Thal to Graz just to train for a few hours is not a myth. It is the truth of a boy who believed he had only two choices: leave this place on his own 2 feet, or bury his dream in that basement forever. Many days he returned home with numb legs and a chest burning from the cold, but the only thing in his mind was the image of Reg Park standing under the stage lights. In Graz, Arnold stepped into a real gym for the first time. The smell of iron, sweat, and weights crashing onto bare concrete. But more important was the feeling of belonging. Here, he was no longer the strange kid, no longer the son who had to bow his head to avoid a beating. Here, he was seen, pushed, challenged. His body changed day by day, but more importantly, his mind changed with it. Every rep, every set, every workout was a promise to himself that his life would not end at the border of Thal. It was also here that Arnold began to visualize his future clearly, not with the vague dreams of youth, but with a certainty bordering on obsession. He learned to study the strongest athletes, analyze every movement, ask himself what he needed to do to surpass them. In his mind, the path from Graz to Munich, from Munich to America, from the gym to the movie set, all began to reveal themselves as a chain of inevitable steps. Some trained to be strong, some to look good, but Arnold trained to rewrite his fate. And it was during these years, when his muscles were still far from defined, when his father's shouts still echoed behind him, when the darkness of childhood still clung to his back, that Arnold quietly stepped into the first chapter of a journey the world would later call legendary. A journey written in the bright red of torn muscle fibers, in sweat dripping down long uphill roads, and in the unwavering belief of a boy who refused to accept the ending life tried to assign him. But Arnold's ambition was never meant to stop at the slopes of Graz. Muscles could be built in a gym, but his dreams needed a wider place to grow. In 1968, at just 21, Arnold left Europe with a thin suitcase, a few $dozen, and an English vocabulary barely enough to understand half a sentence. The flight to America was not just a journey, it was a leap into the void. No relatives, no safety net, no guarantee other than a mad belief that he was born for something bigger. Life in Los Angeles was nothing like the American dream Arnold once imagined. By day, he worked construction, hauling bricks under the blazing sun, his hands torn apart by dried cement. By night, he returned to a cramped room where he slept alongside 5 other young men, all chasing dreams that the city almost never handed out for free. His meals were often dry bread or the cheapest canned food. Yet in his mind, the dream burned bright, as if poverty were just one more test in the harsh exam life had set for him. Arnold always believed if he survived his childhood in Thal, then no city could ever break him. Then fate appeared in the shape of a man, Joe Weider, the godfather of bodybuilding, a visionary who could see where the sport was heading, looked at Arnold and saw not just muscle. He saw vision, star instinct, an energy powerful enough to shape a generation. Meeting Weider was like finding the first person who believed in him completely. Weider brought him to the best gyms, taught him to set goals like a champion, and more importantly, taught him how to turn his life story into a symbol. Just 1 year after arriving in America, Arnold didn't just adapt, he broke through. In 1969, he won his second Mr. Universe title, a victory that made the bodybuilding world in both Europe and America stop and look again. The Austrian kid with broken English was rewriting the standards of strength. Every muscle line, every workout, every competition was Arnold's answer to his father, to the world, that he didn't come to America just to exist. He came to redefine what greatness meant. From the suffocating boarding room to the bright lights of the Mr. Universe stage, that journey was only the beginning of what people would one day call by a single name: the Schwarzenegger era. From Mr. Universe, Arnold didn't slow down. In 1970, he stepped onto the Mr. Olympia stage for the first time, and won. It marked the beginning of a reign bodybuilding had never seen. From 1970 to 1975, he won 6 consecutive titles, each appearance bigger, stronger, and more confident than the last. But each trophy carried a new pressure. Arnold had to live as an icon before he even had time to live as a young man in his 20s. In 1975, after his 6th championship, captured in the documentary Pumping Iron, Arnold announced his first retirement. For many, it was the ultimate peak. For Arnold, it was just the doorway to another dream. By the late 1970s, he began stepping into Hollywood, but the doors there were far from open. Producers mocked him, his accent too heavy, his name too long, his body too huge to play a normal person. Arnold didn't argue. Instead, he stood in front of a mirror night after night, practicing every expression, every breath, every difficult line. He studied English until the muscles in his face ached from forcing the new pronunciation. From a battleground of muscle, he moved to a battlefield of nuance, and he refused to lose. Those efforts bore fruit in 1976, when he landed a supporting role in Stay Hungry. The film earned him a Golden Globe for Best Newcomer, proof that early laughter from Hollywood couldn't decide anyone's destiny. But the true turning point came in 1977 with Pumping Iron, the documentary that exposed the world of bodybuilding as it had never been seen before. In the film, Arnold wasn't just an athlete, he was a character, an icon, someone who made the world realize that bodybuilding had psychology, strategy, artistry, and ambition. Pumping Iron turned him into a cultural phenomenon. The first time in history a bodybuilder became a mainstream star. By 1980, when everyone thought he had left competition forever, Arnold returned to Mr. Olympia, returning in secret, competing amid chaos, and winning amid controversy. That 7th victory, scrutinized and criticized, nonetheless closed the bodybuilding chapter with absolute finality. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the man who won not just with muscle, but with a mind of steel. But the higher he climbed, the thinner the air around him became. Fame made everyone think he was invincible, but he himself knew the truth. Standing alone at the summit meant the higher you go, the colder the wind becomes. That cold didn't come from fans, but from the loneliness of someone forced to uphold a standard set impossibly high by his own success. After closing the book on bodybuilding in 1980, Arnold stepped into an entirely different conquest, no longer the lights of the gym, but the lights of the movie set, where muscles were not just strength, but storytelling material. When Conan the Barbarian premiered in 1982, the world saw a character both wild and deep, and only one person could breathe life into that warrior. Conan was the first door, opening a long hallway leading into Hollywood. It proved that Arnold's body was not just for lifting weights, it was a cinematic language. But the real explosion came in 1984. The Terminator turned him into a global icon. No one expected a role with few lines, cold presence, and near emotionless expression to become legendary. Ironically, the line "I'll be back" was just a simple phrase on the script. But when Arnold said it, it became a decree of destiny. On screen, it was the line of a killing machine. But in life, it reflected the one truth Arnold had lived since childhood. No matter how many times he fell, he always came back, stronger, sharper, as if life were an endless series of missions. From that success, the years 1985-1994 opened a chapter no one had written before. Hollywood witnessed an action star who not only led the box office but redefined the entire genre. Commando, 1985, was as raw as an explosion. Predator, 1987, threw him into a primal hunt between man and the unseen. Total Recall, 1990, explored reality and illusion, forcing Arnold to convey not just strength, but inner confusion. And Kindergarten Cop, 1990, revealed the surprising tenderness inside a giant who seemed built only to hold guns. All of it paved the way for the earthquake that was True Lies, 1994, where Arnold was a spy, a husband, funny yet dangerous, a combination no one before him had ever pulled off so convincingly. Those years, he wasn't just the world's top action star. He had become the standard, a new peak for every muscle-bound actor who came after. This golden era was sealed in 1991 with Terminator 2, Judgment Day. The film didn't just revolutionize visual effects, win 4 Oscars, and earn over $520 million, it pushed Arnold into a more complex, symbolic realm. The emotional action hero. A machine learning how to become a father, learning sacrifice, learning to understand humanity. Behind that steel exterior was the faint reflection of Arnold himself, a man who had spent his whole life searching for a role model he never had as a child. In 1993, when Arnold placed his hand on his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, it wasn't just an honor. It was proof that the boy Hollywood once mocked had rewritten the rules through sheer stubbornness and discipline. But every glory has its cycle. From 1996 to 1997, films like Eraser and Batman and Robin, as Mr. Freeze, revealed an unavoidable truth. Arnold's golden age was shifting. Audience tastes were changing. Hollywood was beginning to prefer depth over violence, psychology over muscle. Box office failures didn't just hurt financially. They shook the sense of invincibility Arnold had always used to hold himself together. And among the glowing posters and red carpet premieres, Arnold began to hear a different sound. The warning of time. No dumbbell could resist it. No director could script him a second youth. The vague pains in his chest, the legacy of a congenital heart defect, crept into his life like a reminder. Even the body that once conquered the world would one day betray the man who owned it. As his film career began to slow down, Arnold stunned the entire United States with a turn no one could have predicted. In 2003, during California's special recall election, he, an action star, an immigrant, a pop culture icon, stepped into politics as if entering a new kind of battle. And he won. The victory rang out like a paradox. Hollywood had always seen politics as a distant world. Yet, it was a Hollywood star who became the leader of America's most populous state. From 2003 to 2011, 2 gubernatorial terms transformed Arnold into a completely different version of himself. Action here did not come from guns or explosions, but from pioneering environmental policies, efforts to balance the budget during a recession, and the ability to move through partisan divides as America grew increasingly polarized. The Governator, a nickname half joking, half reverent, stood as proof that he had turned a movie role into a genuine political identity. But in the shadows of the governor's office, Arnold realized something movies had never taught him. In politics, there are no clear villains, only compromises, patience, and sacrifices no one ever sees. Not every decision made him loved, but most left a lasting mark on California. As his political career reached maturity, Arnold's body began to tell a different story, one he could no longer control with willpower or muscle. The first signs had appeared long before. In 1997, while Hollywood still believed he was an indestructible machine, Arnold quietly lay on an operating table to replace a heart valve due to a congenital defect. The surgery was kept so secret that even some of his closest colleagues never knew. He returned to filming, then became governor, as if nothing had ever happened. But in long meetings and speeches before thousands, fatigue sometimes slipped into his breath like a faint shadow, foreshadowing something larger. By 2018, that shadow became reality. A procedure expected to be simple suddenly turned into an emergency open-heart surgery. Arnold woke to the sound of machines, no longer the man who once lifted hundreds of kilos of iron in the gym, but a patient learning how to breathe evenly again. 2 years later, in 2020, he once more lay under surgical lights. 3 open-heart surgeries in a lifetime, each one a brutal reminder that even the body that once conquered the world had its limits. And after every awakening from anesthesia, the same silent question returned. Was the body he had built since his teenage years still on his side? The clearest answer came in 2024. Doctors concluded his heart was no longer stable enough. It needed a device to help maintain its rhythm. For anyone, that would be heavy news. But for Arnold, the man who once played a half-human, half-machine destroyer, it was a paradox that seemed to close a lifelong circle. From an on-screen image to a real device inside his chest, everything suddenly became too real. When he spoke about it on his personal podcast, he didn't sound angry or defeated, only strangely calm, as if he had glimpsed a truth that decades of chasing glory had never let him see. That in the end, people don't live by strength, but by the fragility they allow themselves to accept. And ironically, in the moment his body was at its weakest, Arnold felt the most alive. As if each supported heartbeat was tapping out something he had lost over the years. The feeling of being a human being, not an icon who must always be invincible. The scars on Arnold's chest had hardly healed when another chapter of his life opened. Gentler, yet more fragile than any battle he had ever fought. Love. And amid the turbulence of politics and health, his story with Maria Shriver remained both his greatest emotional anchor and the most painful silence in a life that seemed filled only with triumphs. They met in 1977 at a charity event, 2 worlds that seemed destined never to cross. Maria, a sharp-minded journalist born into the prestigious Kennedy family, where politics and intellect were values absorbed from birth. Arnold, the muscular young man from the village of Thal, carried the scent of the gym and the burning ambition of an immigrant who never forgot where he came from. Their differences were not a barrier, but a gravitational pull. Maria saw in Arnold a determination no one could teach. Arnold saw in her a guiding light he wanted to reach. Their love grew from those very opposites. They married in 1986 in Hyannis, surrounded by sea winds and the presence of the Kennedy clan. The marriage quickly became symbolic, a blending of intellectual power and iron will. They had 4 children, 4 small worlds carrying both their legacies. Catherine, quiet and thoughtful. Christina, drawn to the arts. Patrick, energetic as youthful Hollywood. And Christopher, the most reserved but the most protected. For Arnold, fatherhood was a path toward repairing the tenderness missing from his own childhood. But the differences that once drew them together slowly pushed them apart. Maria valued listening, family stability, and spiritual depth. Arnold, shaped by a past that forced him to constantly prove himself, always looked outward, always ambitious, always seeking the next challenge. When Arnold entered politics in 2003, Maria had to leave her beloved job at NBC. That decision left a quiet scar in her heart, even though she stood beside him in every campaign, every debate, every exhausted night in the governor's office. Arnold later admitted that during that period, he allowed ambition to overshadow the attention he owed the woman who had stood beside him through all his early struggles. In 2011, the greatest storm of his life struck. Not from the political arena with its fiery debates, nor from the film sets where he once played immortal warriors, but from the very place that should have been safest, home. After leaving the governor's office, the closed door of their Brentwood house opened to reveal a truth Arnold had hidden for 14 years. Joseph Baina, the boy born in 1997 who grew up under the same roof as the family, was Arnold's biological son with Mildred Baina, the family's longtime housekeeper of over 2 decades. The boy's birth year coincided with the year Maria gave birth to their youngest son, Christopher, a coincidence sharp enough to break even the strongest woman's heart. For Maria, it was not just the pain of betrayal. It was the collapse of the trust she had placed in the man who had shared her life for more than 30 years. She packed her things and left the house the very day she learned the truth. A marriage that lasted a quarter century ended not with shouting, but with the cold silence of a shattered heart. Arnold, in one of the rare moments of his life, did not resist. He did not defend himself, did not blame temptation or circumstance. He faced the truth the way one faces an unescapable mirror. He accepted full responsibility and began a quiet journey of atonement, continuing to support and care for their 4 children, helping Maria whenever she needed something, and most importantly, gradually building a relationship with Joseph, the son he had kept in the shadows of secrecy for so many years. Arnold spent more time in the gym with Joseph, teaching him how to control his breath. Each movement, each life principle, learned through sweat and pain. It was not compensation. It was an attempt to mend what should have begun long ago. What surprised many was not the breakup, but the way Arnold and Maria chose to move forward. They did not return to each other, but they did not sever ties either. They continued appearing together at their children's events, standing side by side without bitterness, speaking with undiminished respect. After decades of racing under bright lights, Arnold seemed to find a different pace, slower, gentler, more real. He spent mornings training, afternoons cleaning the horse stable and caring for his dogs, and quiet evenings in his home overlooking the valley, where neither career nor politics demanded anything of him. He slowly relearned something his childhood had never taught him: how to be a father through presence, not achievement. With Joseph, the father-son bond did not grow from blood, but from the initiative of 2 men once standing on opposite ends of a secret. They trained together, talked about work, about the future. Joseph grew up guided by a father who no longer looked like the Terminator, but like a man learning how to face and repair the past. No shame, no avoidance, just a simple connection built day by day. After the scandal, Arnold quietly withdrew from the blinding lights he had dominated for decades. No more thunderous declarations, no more roles shaking the box office. He chose something his long career had never truly given him: real time. Time to breathe, to think, to heal, and time to return to being human in the truest sense. He devoted himself more to charity, not to polish his image, but as a natural act of someone relearning how to connect with the world. He funded education programs, built public sports parks, supported environmental efforts, and invested in Alzheimer's research, the disease that had taken his father-in-law's life and left him with a wound he rarely spoke of. In public speeches, Arnold no longer talked about victories or muscles. His voice grew softer, deeper, and often circled back to three things he believed had saved his life: discipline, forgiveness, and service. His lifestyle changed as well. Arnold adopted a mostly plant-based diet, meditated each morning to settle his mind, and trained only enough to keep his body running smoothly. His current partner, Heather Milligan, a physical therapist, isn't someone who helps him lift weights, but someone who helps him heal wounds muscle and fame could never reach. Arnold calls this stage of his life post-muscle, when strength no longer comes from biceps or records, but from how a man faces his mistakes and grows from them. He lives in Brentwood, Los Angeles, in the hillside mansion he bought in 2002. Once, it was the fortress of a superstar. Now, it welcomes the laughter of grandchildren, quiet gatherings of his children, and occasionally a few old friends from Hollywood's golden years. In the mornings, you might find Arnold cycling through Santa Monica, sometimes stopping to chat with passers-by. No bodyguard, no entourage. A legend carrying the attitude of an ordinary man, learning to enjoy the simplicity a lifetime of chasing glory had stolen from him. Arnold still runs the Arnold Sports Festival, expanding it into the largest multi-sport event in the world. He develops scholarship funds for youth, finances the construction of fitness parks where underprivileged children can train without economic barriers. And recently, in 2025, he published Be Useful, a book that doesn't celebrate grand ambitions, but urges people to dream of becoming useful. A philosophy very different from Arnold in his 30s or 40s, yet one shaped by the falls and comebacks he has lived through. His podcast, Arnold's Pump Club, is where he speaks weekly to millions about health, discipline, and kindness. Not lectures from above, but deeply human reflections from someone who once stood atop the world and knows the cost of forgetting his own heart. Each morning before training, Arnold places a hand on his chest. A simple gesture, yet full of meaning, as if he were thanking his heart, half real and half artificial, for continuing to beat. A reminder that a person may carve a body out of stone, but ultimately survives on a heartbeat as fragile as anyone else's. Today, his net worth is around $1.2 billion, a figure impressive to anyone. But Arnold views it through the eyes of someone nearing the end of his journey, not as a trophy, but as the natural outcome of decades of relentless work. In many interviews, he emphasizes that money was never the goal. It was merely a side reward for discipline, persistence, and the right decisions at the right moments. And in a 2025 video, with a face marked by time but eyes still holding the sharpness that once silenced the Mr. Olympia stage, Arnold shared something simple about aging. He no longer cares about proving strength. What he seeks now is connection, kindness, and the values that make a life whole. Not a bold declaration, but the quiet insight of someone who has passed through glory, scandal, illness, and near loss. The legacy of Arnold Schwarzenegger does not appear as a single monument, but as a streak of light stretching across decades. At times dazzling, at times flickering like a lamp at the end of a hallway, but never extinguished. As he approaches 80 and looks back, Arnold speaks less about awards or records. He speaks more about what remains once the lights of the gym, the film set, and the political arena fade. It is how a trembling boy in a small house in Thal made the world look up. How a poor immigrant athlete turned bodybuilding, once seen as eccentric, into a part of popular culture. How an actor mocked for his accent, his oversized body, and his impossible-to-pronounce name became the mold for an entire era of cinema. And how a politician with no prior office experience could enter the massive machinery of California's government and leave his mark through environmental and educational reforms. But if that were all, His legacy would resemble every other legend, glorious but distant. What makes Arnold's story different is the part left over, the part few ever see, the part he patiently stitched back together after breaking it himself. The cracks left by scandal, the moments on the operating table, the quiet nights in a large house where an artificial heart beat in place of a tired body. Those are what give the legacy its soul. Not because it is perfect, but because it is honest. Today, when Arnold cycles through Santa Monica or sits in his yard watching the sunset, he no longer looks like someone racing against the world. He looks like a man who has finally learned to slow down and listen to himself. The community fitness programs, scholarships, and environmental projects he quietly builds. None of it is meant to assert power like in the old days. It is meant to leave the world a little better than when he entered it. And so, the end of this journey is not a period, but a quiet question. After all the glory and the heartbreak, what remains in a person? Arnold doesn't give an answer. He simply lives it, a reminder that greatness does not lie in muscle, power, or medals on a wall, but in how a person faces their darkest parts and still chooses to move forward. If this story of Arnold's path through both light and shadow makes you reflect, leave a comment below. I'd love to know which moment resonated with you most. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss more human journeys, each one carrying a secret worth listening to.